So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to workshop number 162, titled The I-STAR Organizations and Their Contribution to Development. If that's what you're here for, you're in the right room. Otherwise, you may want to seek alternate lodging. My name is George Sadowski, and I'm representing ICANN and the Web Foundation here. I'd like to start by giving an introduction to the topic. We have 5 discussants, all eminently qualified to discuss the topic, and in addition, unknown to some of you, incognito in the room, we have people who have very good knowledge of this, and I hope they will contribute also. The ground rules will be that each of the 5 discussants will provide their sense of the topic, the dimensions of it that they want to respond to. I'm going to count on them to make their remarks of an appropriate length, and then we will open it up to comments from the floor, questions, however we want to deal with it. It's a large topic, and it's one that can easily exhaust the time we have. So first, the I-STAR organizations. If you don't know what they are, let's talk about them a little bit. I-STAR is an abbreviation for the organizations that are essentially historical and primarily technical with respect to the internet. And this includes, and it's called I-STAR because many of the acronyms for the organizations begin with an I, but not all. So, for example, included in the I-STAR organizations are the Ietf, the Internet Engineering Task Force, ISOC, the Internet Society, ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, and then without spelling things out, or the IAB, the IRTF, the NRO, the IESG, W3C, the RIRs, and IANA. That's a lot of alphabet soup, and some of the, hope that the discussants will pick up on some of these particular organizations. You can find them easily by Googling them. And it's interesting that none of them, only one of them, I would say, is moderately old. We live in internet time, and the progress of this industry, this technology, this service has been very rapid, and we don't realize that most of us in this room are older than all of those organizations. In the 1970s, and I might need some help here on the date, the IANA function started with John Postel, although I'm not sure it was called IANA at the time. And in 1986, only in 1986 was the Ietf formed. ISOC dates from 1992, W3C, the Web Consortium, from 1994, ICANN from 1998, the NRO from, I believe, 2003, something like that, and the RIRs, the Regional Internet Registries, preceded the NRO, but I'm not sure how, probably 5 or 6 years, I don't know the exact date. All of these organizations have a well-defined focus, and it's a combination, it's either solely technical or it's administrative or it's some combination, technical administration. All of them have bylaws and a governance structure, with the exception of the Ietf family, which is currently housed administratively and organizationally in the Internet Society, or under the Internet Society, I should say. And they all cooperate quite well in their fulfilling their appropriate roles in what we are now calling the Internet ecosystem. Of the organizations, only ISOC has a hint of a developmental agenda. The others, I don't believe, do. If so, it's very secondary to their primary function. And these roles, of course, have evolved over time in both the technical and the administrative sphere, so that now they're more complex organizations and larger organizations than they were before. This evolution has caused a change in the focus of how they think about their mandate and how they believe what they believe their place in the world should be. As this set of organizations has grown, and as we've gone from 4 nodes on the previous incarnation of the internet in 1969 to millions and millions now, the expectations with respect to these organizations has changed, both internally and externally. And that's, I think, what we're here to discuss today. What is the proper role of these members, the various members of the ISTOR organization, with respect to the development agenda that we see at the IGF here? And what's the proper measure of resources that is being directed to the development of by the ISTAR community? Furthermore, all of these roles have evolved over time with some coordination, but what can we say about the current pattern of assistance? Is it the most appropriate? Is it the most effective in terms of supporting sustainable development? Or should there be different goals or different distribution of resources be considered and adopted for the future? What types of assistance are these organizations most effective in providing? And does that reflect what they're doing now, what the current allocation of resources is? If not, how should things change? And then finally, what funding and business models would be useful and to support the provision of a desired level and mix of assistance by varied members of the community? I think that the expectations, the answers to most of these questions differ widely based upon where one is sitting in the development and the ICT4D space. And certainly it's not up to us here to tell organizations, the ISTAR organizations, either singly or together, what their role should be. But I think that these roles will expand and will touch more on economic and social development over time. The question is how, what's most effective, what works, what doesn't work, what should they be doing, and what should they not be doing. There is an element of political correctness here that I think we want to avoid. The idea that just because they're members of our team that they should buy into goals that perhaps are not within their mission. We need to make sure that as we talk about what they might be doing and what they might not be doing, we need to respect the mandate and the population, the subpopulation of the internet ecosystem that they represent. All right, those are my initial remarks. I have a speaking order here of first Sylvia Cadena. I'm sorry, that's wrong. First Karen Rose, my fault, who comes from, I'm sorry about that, who comes from the Internet Society. And what I'd like to do, rather than me trying to summarize their background and probably getting it wrong, I'd like them to start with maybe 20 seconds of who they are, why they're here, why they think they're here, and what they're going to be talking about. So, Karen?
Well, thanks, George, and thanks, everyone. My name is Karen Rose, and I'm the Director of Development Strategy at the Internet Society. I've been with ISOC for 5 years and involved in various aspects of regional development work. And prior to that, I was with an internet startup. I was doing some consulting, and even prior to that, I was in government policy for about 6 years. So that's my background. And, you know, in just an opening and talking about the ISTAR community and our role in development, I think as the internet community more broadly, we really have much to be proud of the things we've advanced and achieved. For over 20 years, ISOC in particular, and other members of the community, whether they're individuals or the new organizations that have developed along the way, have been really crucial in providing critical capacity building on internet development, policy, and technology in every region of the world. As the summary of this panel indicated, back in the 1990s, ISOC had a global INET series, in which over 1,500 individuals from developing countries and elsewhere had an opportunity to build capacity and share experience on internet networking development. And many of these attendees to these sessions and ISOC members individually were responsible for really implementing some of the first internet connections in many countries around the world. And across the I community, I know we had a definition here, but one thing that I'd also I think we need to be sure not to leave out are the network operators groups and other regional organizations in the broader I community which carry out critical capacity building activities. And a number of these actually emerged from ISOC's global INETs in the 1990s to deepen more regionally the capacity building work. So I'm talking about really crucial organizations and forums like AFNOG, SANOG, WALC, MENOG, the regional CCTLD communities which have recently developed, other partner organizations such as NSRC, the Network Startup Resource Center, and Packet Clearinghouse, and our other colleagues that work in industry and other organizations that contribute not only their company time but their personal time to internet development. And you know, as a community, we provide assistance to thousands of engineers, policymakers, network managers, among others, every year. And just to give you a scope, because even within the I community, I think sometimes we don't sort of recognize amongst ourselves the scope and the breadth of our work. I just jotted down a number of examples of some things that we do as a community. Network training and capacity building, everything from basic operations to higher level issues like DNSSEC and IPv6. Women's internet engineering training in partnership with organizations like AFCHICS. Roundtables for policymakers and workshops. Online training for youth, next generation leaders. IXP development, assistance and support. As a community, we've reached out and provided wireless links to schools and rural villages and a host of other access projects through grants. I'm sure Sylvia is going to talk about Ietf Asia, another key project which a number of internet community members participate in. LACNOG has one as well. The internet community was among the first to respond to the earthquake crisis in Haiti and helping to rebuild communications there. University networking, helping universities in developing countries increase their networking capacity. It's crucial. And also starting up new forums where members of the community can share experience and grow their experience locally, like LACNOG, AFPIF, and others. So in general, you know, we do have a lot to be proud of, providing vital training and information and community collaboration. And it's really helped keep the internet growing and evolving in many parts of the world for the last 20 years. But with that, I think we always must ask as a community, how can we do more? And how can we do better? And you know, at ISOC, many of you know our motto is the internet is for everyone. And our vision is really to see a ubiquitous, reliable, and sustainable internet across all regions of the world, including developing regions. There should be no second-class countries on the internet. And so with that, you know, in terms of the Internet Society, you know, so where do we stop with sort of development from our perspective? We really don't stop until we reach our motto, which is the internet is for everyone. So while we have done a lot, there's still a long way to go. So the questions that I have to really leave with and ask for the discussion are the following. So as the internet community, how do we scale? How do we scale the work that we do, the people that we reach, and the impacts that we make? While we train thousands a year, there's always high demand. Many of the activities and workshops that we do, you know, always has many more applicants than there are spaces. How do we go from training thousands a year to tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands and broadening our impact? How can we reach deeper into core issues? So for example, we do a lot of network training, but one of the core issues is, you know, one of the reasons why that training is so important is that in many universities or in other technical schools around the world, basic skills aren't getting taught in some of these core places. So how do we reach into these core issues, you know, rather than just doing training on the back end? How do we, as the internet community, you know, help reach further down the chain in terms of capacity building? And thirdly, the question: how do we engage more effectively with development organizations and regional organizations? And this is from a number of perspectives. You know, firstly, as the internet community, we have a lot of experience, and we have a lot to offer. Development organizations have priorities, and they have a lot of work going on, and I think there's a lot of expertise we can offer with respect to those projects. And also, you know, how do we engage on developing with development organizations and regional bodies their ICT strategies going forward. Given that we've had a lot of experience in this area, how do we collaborate and help those organizations design strategies that are going to further the development dollar, regardless of what organization it comes from? So with that, I'll leave it to that and look forward to the discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Karen, and thank you for rounding out the members of the iStar family that I neglected. You're absolutely right to include them all. What I got out of your presentation is that we don't have an iStar D or an iStar T form of organization. We don't segregate our development activities and our technical activities, but we intermingle them because it's important to achieve those goals. And when you pick up all of the little pieces and some of the not so little pieces that could be identified as development oriented, it's a significant list. Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to break the rule for introductions that I established earlier. I'm going to introduce the next speaker because I am so glad to have him here. And this is Tariq Kamal, who was Minister of Communications and Information Technology in Egypt and who was our host for the IGF in Sharm el-Sheikh 2 years ago. It's a real pleasure to have you back here.
Thank you very much, George, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very glad to be again here at the IGF in Nairobi and to participate in this workshop with my beloved community. And I start from here because I'm really sincere when I say beloved community, because this is a truly global community. And George called them iStar. Karen talked about the details, but when I think back 20 years ago, the first time I met George Zadowski and Vint Cerf and Larry Landweber and Scott Bradner and all the leaders somewhere in California, and at that time also various people from the academic sector, and at that time we had a dream together for bringing this internet that they were talking about, that it should be better off than EARN, better off than other private networks, to bring it to the rest of the world and to all over the developing countries. It seemed that it is a far-fetched dream, how to bring this interconnectivity that existed only in some countries in Europe, in Japan, and in the US and Canada to the developing world. And with the support and the bottom-up approach of this community that we are talking about, we were able to do it step by step, to identify players in all over the world, in the various countries, to connect to them and to invite them and to find out the right resources, to do fundraising, to bring them on board. And I was one of those people who were identified by those leaders, global leaders, the names I mentioned. They invited me from Egypt together with a colleague called Nashwa Abdelbaki at that time from the Egyptian Universities Network to join the first developing countries workshop networks. I missed the first one in Kobe in Japan, but I attended the second one in Palo Alto. Fred Baker was there, Randy Bush, and many players who taught us really the basics of the internet and basics of the connectivity. They have injected in us a wonderful spirit, and with this spirit I'm living until today, a spirit of development, a spirit of build-up, a spirit of global cooperation and coordination, a spirit of belonging to a community, although nothing formal. We worked in various organizations, academic, government, business. I used to work for the government for 26 years. Now it's not anymore, but I felt that I am belonging to this global community that is evolving, that is really growing, and that has a snowball effect, and I am part of this snowball effect, and I try to contribute also to this growth of the snowball effect, to bring them to Egypt and to bring them to Africa and to bring them to our parts of the world. What was the motto? What was the motivation? Connectivity, 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 to Egypt, to Africa, to North Africa, to South Africa, to East Africa, to Central Africa, to West Africa, and to Latin America, and to Asia Pacific, and to the rest of the world. And every time when we had a country online, George Zadowski was sending us an email, this country is now online. I can ping them. They are there, and here are the key. Here are the key. Yes, these are true memories and genuine memories, and everybody was so happy and sending them quickly an email via our 2.4K modems connectivity that we had, congratulating this or that guy, the leader in this country, that they're online. What brought us together? Capacity building, development, training. This was the annual event where we were there in order to be educated, in order to learn more, to learn each other, and to transfer experiences as well. This bottom-up approach went so positively that when I attended the first time back in 93, in 1994, the second year, I was invited to be a lecturer in the Prague event. And this was courageous from the leading team to invite a student of just last year, to come and be a teacher the year after. And all the experience that I had was only 12 months, but they did it. And they introduced us to the international community, and we did our share, and we contributed, and we had our failures as well, but we gave our contributions as such. This is the build-up of a global community that has happened, and with the support of ISOC and with the Ietf and the leading figures that are mostly coming from technical background, but with this belonging, we're able to build up. I see ourselves now as a global community that are here in Nairobi, and last year in Vilnius, and the year before I was privileged to host you in Sharm el-Sheikh, that we have a new responsibility in front of the global community of the internet. Again, the same team is asked to have a new responsibility in terms of the internet, in terms of development, in terms of internet governance for development. And unfortunately, I need to say it, I haven't over the 20 years seen another team, another community that has this belonging to each other, that is so consistent, that is so close to each other, and that kept the relation also very healthy and very successful over the last 20 years. So I see us with a new mandate now. The mandate is not basic connectivity, but internet for development, internet governance for development. I see, again, ourselves that we have to have a new phase of outreach to developmental agencies, as George has mentioned and Karen has mentioned, to new players that are outside the technical, our beloved technical communities, development agencies, social agencies, policy-making agencies, legal agencies that work. And work with them hand in hand. They need us. They don't have this conglomerate of people from all over the world that meets annually and is every day online 24 hours, 24/7 as we are. This does not exist. I have worked in politics. I have worked on a governmental level. I have worked in various international fora, and I haven't seen this belonging. So again, we need to have this outreach. We need to be working together and have this outreach because we have the responsibility. This time the mandate is access to knowledge. This time the mandate, when we talk about training, complex policy making issues about internet governance. This internet that we have together, created together, has become a complex issue. From a legal point of view, from a social point of view, from a developmental point of view, from a local content point of view, from language point of view. And we need to show that we are able as a community really to be up to the responsibility and to face again and lead again once more in the next 10, 15, 20 years, the world with a new generation, with a younger generation that comes on and puts their input in there. We should work with law enforcement agencies. I see it in my own country, in Egypt. They need a background about internet issues. And they don't have someone else except the team of the Egyptian chapter, ISOC chapter back, and the team of the ministry to ask to and to refer to. Whether Tarek is there or Tarek is not there. If he's not there, there are Hoda, there is Nermeen, there is Christine, there is Manal, and many other players. So again, they ask us, although we are all coming from a technical and academic background, about legal issues where they need help. They want us to connect them with the rest of the world, with respective agencies that can be of help to them elsewhere outside. So that's definitely an issue. That we have also a mandate and a responsibility to avoid a generational gap. The young people, I'm not worried about them. because they have their analytical and digital skills. But there are other segments of the society in the developing world that we should be looking at, otherwise they will be marginalized more and more. And today the tools, luckily enough, allow us to do this outreach in training, in capacity building with the iStar on content issues, but in local content issues, everyone in his own respective language, with the content that is relevant to him, that is relevant to the building the communities. And those communities are not only geographically localized, but they are communities that exists worldwide. And this is the beauty about the internet. The Arab-speaking population is 350 million. Only 70% are living within the Arab world and 30% outside. But they want to link back to their roots and to their communities in their local content. And again, the internet is able definitely to do that. We want training and capacity building on entrepreneurial skills. This wonderful young people in the Arab world that have done the Arab Spring and have done the revolution, they want to use it not only for political reform, but as well for economic and social reform. And we have a responsibility as a community to help them in that, to help them to find jobs and to help them to empower them to create new jobs. And I see here our gathering in IGF a wonderful opportunity in order to think together about that. Everyone in his respective role, and every organization again using its respective role, but in this now time with a new vision. We are, believe it or not, becoming some grassroots organization. ISOC with its chapters worldwide. The ICANN with its at-large membership and inclusion. The IGF with its rotation. So we can do that by having really now our responsibilities and by having our presence worldwide. So we need to work definitely on those issues. And I will conclude by saying that there are worries, for example, in our part of the world about child online safety. This is becoming a very, very sensitive issue in the developing world and in the developing countries. And again, this is something where we can contribute in awareness, in human resources development, in capacity building with the respective agencies that can help in that. This workshop brought me back to wonderful memories. It gave me hope for hopefully together with you as a community for another 5 or 10 years or whatever time we might have together. And thank you, George, for this invitation. And I hope by those remarks I have shed the light on some issues of importance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you captured the spirit of those early days extraordinarily well. The one thing I realized was that you characterized it as a bottom-up development, which it was. I never thought of it as a bottom-up development. It didn't occur to me. We were just a team working together.
There was some leadership.
Okay, that's fine. We're going back to self-introductions now, and what I'd like to ask Sylvia Cadena to contribute to the discussion.
Thank you, George. And thank you, everybody, to be here. Just before, when you were having lunch, we had an awards ceremony in this very room, and we shared the results of the IGF program for the last 3 years, and some little gold boxes of chocolates that I hope that you will enjoy. The ones that arrived late and don't have them, please let me know at the end so you can share them. We want to share the sweet fruits of innovation with you all. As Tarek mentioned, I totally agree with you about the spirit of all the work that has been done in the past, and how the possibility of reflecting on the questions that George put together for this workshop brought us to the past. I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge that I'm a beneficiary of the support provided by the iStar group also. 15 years ago, that first opportunity changed the plans I have made for my future and allowed me to be here with you today. The support I received from ISOC and APC to attend the INET 96 in Montreal allowed me to go back to my country in Colombia to support the civil society organizations to establish their first internet presence and discover how to use it in a more strategic way in a country that was under threat, basically, in a very violent and difficult context. The support to imagine what to do next came from many training events and conferences provided by that very first opportunity. And I've crossed paths many times with the people I've met there, and many of them are here, still committed and actively engaged on internet development issues. I truly believe that we have to give back and provide the same opportunity and even better opportunities for others. The program that I'm coordinating now for these things in life, I'm from Colombia and I end up living in Australia, running a grants program for Asia Pacific, is the Information Society Innovation Fund. We are supported generously by APNIC, ISOC, .Asia, and IDRC. And it's an interesting partnership between 8 agencies, organizations from the iStart group, and the private sector. We are trying to stimulate creative solutions in the Asia-Pacific region and doing it through small grants and awards. APNIC is a non-for-profit member-based organization that distributes IP numeric addresses in the Asia-Pacific region, covering 56 economies from Afghanistan to Tahiti, as almost all of you already know, but I have to say it. And we invest heavily in ICIF to support ICT research and development. This is an important way in which IPNIC is committed to help internet growth in the Asia-Pacific region and to facilitate networking and information exchange through the internet community. We have allocated 670,000 Australian dollars to 23 initiatives in the Asia-Pacific through grants and awards over the last 3 years, and the projects selected showcased innovation, cooperation, and technical knowledge, as trying to reflect in a way that spirit that Derek was mentioning and how this collaboration is so important to keep the ball rolling, and that snow effect that you mentioned. The technical reports that they have produced have been released using a Creative Commons license. All the software and applications that they develop has to be released for public use. They are obligated to document all their processes and make self-evaluation exercises and share those results with the community. Because we truly believe that that's also an important way of giving back, is to provide the technical documentation required. We conducted a review about the ICIF operation last year, listening to the messages coming from the pool of applicants and the grant recipients who kindly participate in a survey and help us through all this evaluation process about the selection and implementation of the grants program. We've learned some facts that we would like to share with you today, and how do we read them. We have proof from these grants recipients and the pool of applicants that there is a lack of local access to funding sources or initiatives. Requirements tend to be so specific in making it so difficult for organizations to find the support they need. Quality of the proposals gets sacrificed, as the investment the organization needs to put into developing a full proposal might not compensate if the proposal is not funded. Most of the funding requested is intended to support organizational development, improvement of infrastructure that the infrastructure they have, to update the equipment, and in most cases as the only way to retain critical technical staff. Organizations are concerned about the sustainability of their initiatives, and they are getting more and more creative about the business models behind them. International travel, that used to be a big component of ICT4D projects, as technicians were not available at the local level, has been so significantly reduced that is only 2% of the budget that we allocate. 2% of the whole pool of applicants that have requested money from us. Small grants for small organizations seems like a logical fit in terms of the scope and capacity of both the organization and the funds provided. However, it was very interesting to see that big organizations with more than 100 staff see small grants as the way to go to support their I&D departments without risking their own budgets, which is crucial for internet development. The technical expertise behind the proposals received was quite remarkable. 96% of the people submitting proposals had a master or a PhD and more than 10 years of experience in the Asia Pacific. Which, when considered against the need to pay for their salaries and fees, is a bit frightening, because as the loss could be monumental. If organizations don't get the support they need to retain key technical staff and keep supporting women participation. Seems to us like the focus of the innovations go more to the rural areas, where the incumbents are have less economic interest and the challenges are greater. The current climate might not seem like the most appropriate to argue the case for ICT grant funding of any kind, small or large. As we are still experiencing instability of the financial markets, many traditional donors have retreated from ICT funding and commercial providers are extending coverage into the peripheral areas, in some cases without the participation from community organizations that worked towards universal access years before. So we are seeing a bit of a step back in many ways. The volume and efficacy of funding for ICTs for development has been shaped by several factors in the last couple of decades, moving from its early revolutionary potential towards the mainstreaming across the economy and the society. We in IPNIC believe that the establishment of social responsibility programs to support initiatives aligned with their objectives in the economies of their choice is a smart move. Of course, you can join ICF if you want. That would be even better. But partners and sponsors of different grants programs are making success stories that are actually really there, that are walking the corridors of this venue. Incentives such as tax exemptions are available for those supporting specific development areas or local economies. Benefit from marketing can also be tangible, but it's important not to lose sight of the real objective here, which is not paying less taxes or get more media coverage, but to support initiatives serving the communities. Partnerships with the private sector, where organizations deeply rooted in ICT work can guide the funding allocations and become more relevant. And administration of grants funds should be more efficient, covering only a few cents for every dollar allocated and not dollar per dollar. Most of the IE Star organizations funding support gets allocated into capacity building through technical training initiatives like workshops and materials. To be able to fight for the sustainability of the project supported, investment is needed to provide much needed tools so innovators can learn about business development. To be able to spot on innovation, aggregated market research is needed so project teams stop reinventing the wheel. Active collaboration among aid programs and agencies to support through different initiatives the different stages grant recipients might be. So in my opinion, although it's interesting to innovate on how we provide funding and support, it's important to recognize how important it is to keep supporting things that we have been supporting before, but targeting new scenarios, new players, bringing the internet and providing ways to use it strategically. So keep providing that first opportunity to make ideas a reality. Keep bringing the Sylvias from 20 years ago to the next INET workshop or the next training thing. Provide the knowledge and contacts needed to grow and develop. Provide support and organizational development to retain staff. Link innovators to incubators and business roundtables to enhance their opportunities to continue growing. And organizational development to create stability, to retain that staff and retain that knowledge where is needed in the local communities. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It hadn't occurred to me how much we developed when until you started talking about localization of training. In 1993, and for the next 7 or 8 years, we brought people to training workshops from halfway around the world. It was very expensive, although it had its educational benefits. And now, when you talk about training, the travel budget being 2% of the entire operation, that's evidence that the training has worked, that the knowledge has diffused, and it's one answer to the scaling issue that Karen brought up earlier. The next speaker will be Katim Toure, and I'd like to preface his introduction by saying that he's my co-conspirator on the ICANN board, and as a result of one of his initiatives in the board that we have this session, that the question was raised, how can ICANN help development. And Katim is a staunch supporter of developing countries and the attempt to improve their situation with regard to internet and all that surrounds it. And so we had a long talk and decided that it was a subject worth bringing up to the regular community. So, Katim?
Thank you very much, George, and good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to start by saying that I think I can preface my statement by saying that because often in ICANN meetings you have to declare where your conflicts of interest are, and I think in here I wouldn't talk about a conflict of interest, but a convergence of interests. That's my interest and the interest of developing countries, at least as I see them, being somebody from the developing world, from the Gambia in specifically. I had jotted a few responses to the questions that George has circulated that we should attempt to respond to in our presentations, and I'll just go over them very briefly. But before that, let me say that I am really glad to be here. I think this is a very important issue because when we talk about the I organizations, the I star or I asterisk organizations, we're talking about organizations that are very important in the internet ecosystem. And I think, in my mind at least, providing us new opportunities and new paradigms in international development cooperation, how we should go about the business of providing help and assistance and support to the developing world to get them to have the internet infrastructure and indeed the technology base that they need. I think the reasons for, I can cite at least about 3 reasons, and that list is certainly by no means exhaustive, why these I-star organizations are important. First off, of course, is the fact that they are involved in areas of activity that are tremendously important and in fact are becoming more and more important. You know, the business of internet and information and communications technologies in general is a very profound, profoundly important area. And so any organization that's involved in doing this, especially doing it to help developing countries get to where they need to be, is a very important organization in my book. Secondly, that they have structures and processes that really lend themselves to the work that they do in terms of development partnership and cooperation. Generally, they are more open and a bit more flexible in their structures and in their processes. I think certainly when we talk about pounding tables and talking about, you know, our rights in a multi-stakeholder environment, we only have to look around at the international development community and see that we do not actually get accorded those same privileges, shall I say, or those facilities in other more traditional development organizations. And I think this is where the I organizations are particularly exciting for the simple reason that they offer other alternatives to development cooperation and partnership. And importantly also, because this is at the end of the day what brings the bacon home, technical competence. I mean, I have been on the ICANN board for almost 3 years now, and I'm always awed, and maybe it's because of where I'm coming from, by the quality of people that I meet. And I think we are very fortunate in the developing world to have this incredibly talented organization, incredibly good-willed organizations helping developing countries to develop the internet facilities and services that they have in those countries. So there's absolutely no question in mind just on those 3 reasons why these organizations are important. And as important as they are, as has been said by Karen, and I think alluded to by Tarek and Sylvia, we also have to acknowledge that there are serious challenges that we have to address, at least take note of as we move forward. First, of course, is the fact that these organizations are certainly nowhere near the resource endowment or resource envelopes that intergovernmental organizations have or the private sector multinational corporations have. So we have to deal with the challenge of the relatively small resource base that they have both collectively and individually. And I think, and I say this with a little bit of trepidation because I hate to say it, but it is the reality that we're dealing with a community that, at least in my mind, that is so technically oriented that there are challenges in building a development cooperation culture in the community. Now, I think the way I like to see it is that everybody has to have a voice, So maybe you are so technically competent, there's got to be something that's missing, and that's that component that I'm talking about, the need to develop a development cooperation framework. I mean, I shout and scream about this in ICANN all the time. We're getting there, but I think it is something we have to bear in mind and see what we can do, just as we go about providing assistance to developing countries. How can we make the work of the ISTAR organizations even easier by inculcating in them the culture, the sensitivities, and the understandings that's going to make them more effective in the work they do, and also ensure that we have a more effective partnership that's going to work for all of us. Now, with regards to the question about what proper role they can have with respect to the economic and social development of in developing countries, I can name three roles here, and various. I'm glad that various presentations that went before me, panelists before me, actually touched on this. So this kind of made me feel very good that at least I'm going to be standing on solid ground when I say some of these points. First, of course, is capacity building. As Tarek has said, Dr. Kamel has said, this is some area that they have been involved in for a very long time and doing that very effectively. And I think that's one area they certainly should continue to get involved in. There's also, I think, the very good role that they provide in the policy dialogue space. And again, this is very important, not only by virtue of the output of the various policy development processes, but I think even more importantly, in fact, by virtue of the culture of dialogue that is inculcated in various partners that participate in these processes. When we talk about the multi-stakeholder process, I always tell people, for me, it's especially exciting because translated to governance at the national level, I think it can lead to significant improvements in accountability, significant improvements in resource use, for the simple reason that if you ask people what you are going to do for them, seek their consent and get information from them, the resources that you're going to put to use are going to put to much more effective use than you sit down, and if you sit down in your corner office and imagine in your infinite wisdom that this is what's best for the people in Kibera region or in the Kibera slums of Nairobi. So I think that's also a very important role they can play in development and socio-economic development in developing countries. And finally, and I think very obviously, they can also play the critical roles in helping developing countries build their critical internet infrastructures. A very good example, for instance, is in the rollout of, say, Anycast servers to really help. Of course, we know one of the biggest challenges we face in many of these developing countries is the relatively very high bandwidth costs that they have. And of course, those costs would be brought down significantly by deploying as many Anycast servers instances as is possible, thereby reducing the traffic between those internal countries' networks and the rest of the global internet. So I think that's just one example. And I think in here I should mention, for instance, one of the regional internet registries, the African one, AfriNIC, has an Anycast deployment project, and ICANN is working with other organizations to help a number of African countries deploy Anycast servers. So I think that's just, those are three areas in which they can get involved in. I don't want to get too far and get too carried away before I make a total fool of myself. So I'll stop there and give people an opportunity to chime in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katim. Probably most of you don't know this, but Katim used to be a radio talk show host, and he is capable of filling a void. So thanks very much. I'm hearing some themes that are being repeated by various speakers, but others that are new to the discussion. So finally, we have Olga Cavalli, no stranger to this community, and Olga, you may declare or not declare your vice according to how you feel about it.
Thank you very much, George. I'm really honored to be invited to this panel with Sylvia, Karen, Mr. Kamel, and Katim, of course. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Many things have been already said, so I won't go through them. I agree with most of the things that you have already said. And I would like to bring you my perspective, why I'm here, for several reasons. I am advisor to the government of Argentina, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I was the Argentina representative in WICIS. I'm a MAG member. I'm an ISOC member. I am a secretary of our chapter in Argentina. What else? I follow several lists in Ietf. I have it here. Yeah, that will come. I'm I'm the GAG representative of Argentina. I was for 4 years a GNSO council member. I was the vice chair there, and we, with Bill, have shared several initiatives there, also thinking about development and outreach in the GNSO. And I was elected there by non-com at that time, led by George. So I'm quite involved in several of these spaces, always with a dream, something similar to what Sylvia said. When I first to WICIS and when I first went to my first ICANN meeting, I had the dream to have more representation of Latin America in all those spaces. Why? Because if you look at the numbers of participation of different regions, my region is always the least represented for several reasons. Our region is, you know, Sylvia, it's special. It's very, very unequal. We have beautiful cities, like you would be in my city, Buenos Aires. You feel like, oh, this is Paris, Rome, or whatever. And 10 blocks from there, you have very, very poor people living together. It happens in Brazil, in Colombia, all over. So we have very, very unequal societies, infrastructures, unequal education, unequal access to information, to critical internet resources to everyone. So my dream when I started to go into these spaces was to have a more equal, it's a very big dream, but it's to have more equal Latin America and have more people accessing information, because you don't know, but the region with more poor people is Latin America. It's not other regions. And it doesn't look like, but we are kind of in the middle of richness and poorness. So this is extremely difficult when you try to do things, because some people is very, very well educated and have access to many things, and some others do not. So this is the perspective that I would like to share with you after my experience in ICANN and in ISOC and in IGF, of course, and in other spaces. I feel that the role of these organizations, as Katim said, is extremely important. We work a lot with ISOC, doing outreach, doing many events in the region. Also in ICANN. Some barriers that I find very important. One is not being so regional oriented. Language, for example, it's an issue, language. Even though I speak English, I can tell you GNSO was challenging. I mean, when they talk, if you learn Spanish and I talk to you like what I talk with my friends in Buenos Aires in a cafe, you won't follow me, because you won't follow me, because it's my daily language. But if you talk in English like that and in a teleconference, I have problems in following. Then it's not only the language, it's the way you approach the language and the way you include people coming from other communities, even though we accepted that English was the language of GNSO. And that was really challenging for me. Of course, my English is much better now than before, but that's good for me. But it's something that my colleagues, and I repeat it many times. Other thing that I would suggest to these organizations, and they are doing it slowly but surely, but I would say that it should be more focused on, is to have more representation in the region. ICANN has Rodrigo. He's a nice guy. He's a very good friend of mine. He's only one person for Latin America. It's a huge region with a lot of people. He travels all the time. He lives in an airport and in a plane, and it's extremely challenging for him to handle such a big region. So I guess perhaps a small office. ISOC is starting to do that, and I think it's doing very well. We have also a friend of mine there, Sebastian, with an office. He was from Argentina. He moved to Uruguay, but he's still a good friend of us, and it's a joke. And I think that these organizations should go towards that, Special mention, IETF. No meeting in the southern part of the world. That's something. That's something we have to at least change. I've said that this many times, also to Raul Echeverria and others. I say, guys, one time, we are kind people. We are nice. We don't bite you. We don't hit you. We will take good care of you, have good wine, good food. That should happen. I don't know what happens. I've been told that they are not interested in outreach. I don't know if this is true or not. No, it's true. Maybe there's a reason for that. There is always a reason for that. So I think that they should look at following those lists. It's complicated also because of the language. And what else? In this regional focus, I have tried to initiate some activities after having a nice experience in Germany. We started a school of internet governance in Latin America. It was a totally crazy idea with no money, with no funding, with only this idea, that dream, like Sylvia had, with my colleague and husband, Adrian. We started this idea. We started the first one in Buenos Aires. Of course, it was easier for me. We live there. And we trained in a 1-week training, intensive training of internet governance, 26 fellows. We paid them everything, unless the ticket. We brought people from all over the region. It was so good, so nice, that we could repeat it again in Sao Paulo in 2009, and we did it this year in Mexico, and next time we'll be in Colombia in 2012, with our host there will be the Ministry of ICT. So bringing the regional activities brings a lot of value to the people. What we do is why we move in the region, because we want to allow people from different countries to be there and participate. It's extremely expensive and complicated to move around Latin America. If you live in Europe, you take a train, you go everywhere. It may be not so cheap, but it's easy, and it's clean, and it goes at the hour. That doesn't happen so easily in Latin America. It's more complicated. It's extremely expensive. So if you go country by country, it's much more work, but it's much more nicer, and it brings a lot of value. How we measure of course, this is very small. I would never want to compare this with any of these institutions. I participated in a conference call, and someone told me, how can you dare compare your small school with what ICANN does? I don't want to compare, but it's an experience. I won't tell the name. It's an experience that it's going well. What we do, we track the activities of our students, and several of them have now relevant activities in RARs and in the regional CCTLD association, which is like TLD. In their universities, they are invited to several fora. So I will stop here, and my general comment would be, fantastic organizations should be more focused and more developed, regionally oriented, perhaps with some offices there and some more activities. Thank you very much. Did I talk too much?
Not yet. You're okay. Thank you, and I thank you for bringing up the sensitivity to language. It's really important, and we often forget that when we discuss things in groups like this, we're talking to people for whom English is a second or a third language, especially in Africa. And it's important to remember that. So I hope also in part the fact that you and Sylvia were on the panel helps to make up for the inequity with regard to Latin America that you mentioned. So we're now going to have some interventions from the floor. Here are some rules. If you want to introduce a topic, you raise your hand. If you want to intervene for less than 5 seconds, perhaps just to change it, to correct a factual error very quickly, one finger. If you want to make a substantive comment on, you choose. If you want to make a substantive, never mind, a substantive comment on the existing topic, 30 seconds or less, 2 fingers. If you don't want to do any of those things, don't raise your hand. So I'll try to keep a queue. Queue management is tough, but for me. But let me try. So who wants? Oh my God! All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll come back. And I hope. Yeah, would you? Yeah. Brian?
30 seconds. My name is Brian Cute. I'm the CEO of Public Interest Registry. We operate .org. In listening to the discussion and thinking about the question of how to improve on the development front for the iStar, two questions have formed in my mind recently. Some of you may know we're going to apply for .ngo TLD, and I've had the opportunity to have direct interaction with NGOs. In India, for example, with a workshop and a trip to a village where ICT has been implemented in a meaningful way. The questions that formed in my mind, which I think iStar organization should ask themselves, is what is the nature of your contact with the community you're trying to serve, those in the developing world who need your assistance? Is it direct? Is it indirect? The direct contact is the best. Secondly, are you partnering with anybody? We had the opportunity to partner with the Digital Empowerment Foundation in India, and they bring a complementary set of interactions that really multiply the ability for us to make a difference. So those two questions are, what's the nature of your interaction, direct or indirect? Are you partnering with somebody?
State your name, please.
I'm Peter. I'm Peter Brook. I'm the chairman of the World Summit Award. We were started in 2003 to put the issue of best practice in e-content onto the agenda of the World Summit on Information Society. And we have used the mechanism of a global best practice contest in order to do basically three things. First of all, put the focus on that aspect of the entire ecology of the internet where we do not see mega industrial concentration. And I think that when I listen to many of the interventions here this afternoon, there is a submerged side like the iceberg that's below the ocean. And the below the ocean is that we have on the netware, on the hardware, and on the software, what operating systems concern, a high level of concentration. Where the diversity is on the side of contentware. On that side where applications are, that is the side where we interact, where actually the spirit is, where Tarek was saying so much, and also where the community is, where people are actually engaging in the value add for that kind of internet developments which we wish for development. And so what the World Summit Award does is actually bring that out and try to globally network people around us. The second one is we are all somewhat heroes because we are actually part of the international traveling expert community. We are a virtual and real expert organization with open fringes and access. Many of the people who produce content sit in the proverbial basement or in the garage, don't see many people and do not get recognition and do not get invited in. And so what the World Summit Award tries to do is it tries to create actually this kind of open mechanism to bring people in. And the third thing is there's a lot of good talk, and I like this very much when we talk about, for instance, what's happening in South America, what happens in Africa. The real best practice cases of South-South cooperation, that needs to be established. And the World Summit Award has shown that people from Guatemala can instruct and engage with people from Singapore and people from Malaysia with people in Ghana and do very, very interesting things. And when they do something from Finland together with somebody from Brazil, it's not north-south, but it's actually south-south in a very different way. It's on an equal opportunity of exchange and of richness and diversity. And I think that is something very, very important which we need to see. We need to see that we are sitting on top of a highly concentrated industry. We need to see that we need to get people out and be open and transparent for the content creators and involve them. And we need to see that the networking and the benefits of South-South cooperation are absolutely essential.
Thank you. The role of content is important, and I'm glad you stress it. I think we have Bill, Fred, and then we'll take care of the row here and ask for a second round of interventions.
Bill Drake from the University of Zurich. I really enjoyed this, and I couldn't help thinking of a book that Carl Malmud wrote about 20 years ago. I think it was called Exploring the Internet or something like that. But he went around the world talking to all the people that were involved in actually getting the net started in different countries and looking at their experiences and so on. And when I think of that and the kind of work you did around the world, George and Gippy and so on, and then listen to Olga and Sylvia and Tariq and their experiences, I think it's really wonderful how the contributions have been made. However, I think you guys are also lousy storytellers, by which I mean the following. All these contributions that have been made by the technical community, I think are not fully understood and appreciated in the larger political environment in which we operate here. And in fact, you know, anybody who's spent time throughout the WSIS process, throughout the IGF process, and in other environments around internet governance will know there are plenty of people, and I think I should direct this to you in particular, there are plenty of people in governments around the world who don't fully understand or appreciate the contributions that have been made. There are plenty of people in civil society who regard, as many of these governments do, regard the technical community and its activities with some skepticism or wonder what, you know, who are these people, what are they really about, and view the technical community as sort of this status quo oriented network of people, not recognizing how much has been done. And I can't help thinking, how did this kind of gulf in perceptions get allowed to develop? Doesn't matter. Do we want to try and do something about it? And in particular, I can't help wondering why you guys don't do like a little booklet that, for example, traces all this stuff, because it's lost history for most people. It could be in the bag at the next IGF, explaining how many of these countries got on the net, where the folks got trained, how the policy processes started, all that. Because it's kind of like law, it's known to the folks that are inside the community that have been involved in doing this stuff. Outside the community, it's not recognized or appreciated enough. And that feeds into then the larger geopolitical stuff that's going on at this meeting and beyond. So I think it's worth thinking about.
Thank you very much for that intervention. It is true. I mean, I think we don't toot our own horn very much. We don't feel it's necessary. 5 seconds from Brian, and then I'm going to pick up some interventions here.
Just a quick counter thought. I think, to your point, their reward is in heaven. And as Tariq said, the next challenge is that governments are really paying attention now, and you have to step up yet again.
Fred?
So,
introduce yourself, please.
Sure. My name is Fred Baker. I work for a company called Cisco Systems. You may have heard of us. And from 1996 to 2001, I was the Ietf chair. At the moment, I chair the IPv6 Operations Working Group, and I serve on the committee that chooses where the next meeting is going to happen. Let me tell you how to get a meeting into Buenos Aires. You interested? Okay. When the Japanese asked me in 1998, when the Chinese asked me in 1997 to position meetings in Japan and in China, I asked them who they had working in the Ietf. The Ietf meets in places where its participants come from. Okay, that's where it meets. And the purpose is to get the work of the Ietf done. Okay, now a lot of our work is done on mailing lists. It's done on the web, it's done in email, it's done in la-da-da-da-da. So there's no reason that you have to go to a meeting to participate. In point of fact, there's a lot of work, as you know, that can be done directly on the list. So what they did was they started participating in working groups. They started posting internet drafts. They got some RFCs written. They became members of the IESG and the IAB, and they chaired working groups. And in 2002, we had a meeting in Yokohama. In 2004, we had a meeting in Korea. 2010, we had a meeting in Beijing. Okay, and this is how you get a meeting positioned where you are. Get active. Right now, the only person from Argentina that I know that's working in the Ietf is Fernando Gaunt. Okay, get your people involved. The meeting will come to you.
Thank you. I forgot your name.
Fred Baker.
Fred, you're totally right, and I know that story, and I know Fernando. He's a good friend of mine. He's from La Plata, from the University of La Plata. I'm in the lists. I follow them. I don't have time, and I'm not so. Although I'm an engineer, I'm in this moment. I'm more politically, policy-oriented than technical. So I must confess, for me, it's too technical, and I don't participate, but I follow. And he does participate. One barrier, the language. It's extremely complicated to follow that list unless you are very, very good English speaker and very, very good technical-oriented person. We are working on that. We are working on that with the school and with ISOC in trying to introduce the idea. But in my modest opinion, it's kind of a chicken and egg issue. Perhaps you could have few people and have the meeting. Could be Buenos Aires, would be lovely, or elsewhere. But given the first step, that would be a message. And perhaps it's Fernando and 2 or 3 more. We are working on that. We hope to promote participation in the list. It is not easy. One thing that I would like to say, it's also the relationship that this organization should promote with universities. I teach in universities technical issues. I teach networking. People who works with me in the university have no idea that ICON exists. They know that Ietf make the rules, but have no idea how. And they know that ISOC has a role, and new GTLDs, what is that, Olga? So I'm doing some lectures in the university for letting them know that the DNS is changing. Oh, universities of a city that is considered leading place for teaching at university level, which is Buenos Aires. Many people come from Colombia to Buenos Aires to learn. So that is something that we have to work with. University, I talked to Fernando the other day, and with the university networking, because the teachers are not aware of what we all do here. So that's another problem. So I'll stop here.
Well, let me follow up just a little bit on that. In my day job at Cisco, the work that I do relates to university research. So perhaps we should talk further.
Both Karen and Sylvia have raised one finger. Let's do that, and then we'll go over here and take a couple of interventions, and finally we'll come back to you, Tim, if you're willing to wait till the end of that particular sub-queue.
Yeah, I'll just make 2 short comments. One, on the IETF, one of the things, as you mentioned, that ISOC is doing is working to help ramp up that cycle, that chicken and egg cycle. And the ISOC fellowship to the IETF is key, which Fernando has actually been a rock star in. And working with universities, one of our planned programs on IETF outreach in Latin America is specifically to work with universities, because it's a really good channel, we think, especially for Latin America in particular. Personally, on the IETF meeting issue, I think, Fred, I'm voting for Cancun. We might be able to split the difference there, sort of North America, sort of Latin America. Maybe it would make people happy in the interim. And then just really quickly on Bill's comment, I think Bill is really right in terms of, for many years in the community, we've done the work because we know it's done well, and we're satisfied in the fact that we see the benefits sort of firsthand. But we do need to do more to tell our story, and I think, not just to toot our horn, but I think that we have a very unique approach to development within the internet community, and I think you saw that reflected around here. Bottom up, we treat people as colleagues, not trainees. We tend to come from a view that internet development is 80% social engineering and 20% technical engineering, so to speak. A lot of it is about bringing people together. And one reason that that's important is, for what I've seen in some development agencies, those are not the things that they value necessarily when they're thinking about developing programs or what to reward. And I think we need to talk about that because we do have a model that has been working and has worked for a while. And with that, I want to pick that up because ISOC next year is having an anniversary year celebration next year in April. And I think this is key. You know, we're reflecting on the things that we have done as an organization over the last 20 plus years, including those of you that are here, our earliest INET fellows. We want to know where our INET, global INET participants have gone and what's been done with that experience. So Bill, thank you very much for raising it. I think it's key, and I think as a community we need to do more in that area.
Okay. Sylvia, let's have one conversation, please. Sylvia?
Just wanted to respond to some of the questions. First is that most of the proposals that we have found, as Karen mentioned, we don't treat the grantees as recipients. They are our colleagues, so they are our partners in all the 23 economies where we have been working, and that's why they are here. Some of them are here, and that's why we try to do. And they work with direct beneficiaries, and if they are developing software, for example, part of the requirements is that they show participation and engagement from the supposedly base of users that they think they have. About south-to-south cooperation that, sorry, I forgot your name, you mentioned. I'm very happy to share some good news maybe that are not official yet, that we are, just as soon as the IGF finishes, we have a very interesting meeting going on with the FRIDA program that BLACKNIC is running in Latin America, Ietf program that APNIC is running in Asia Pacific, and AFRINIC to start an alliance on small grants with support from IDRC, and that the idea is that we will keep our regional programs, but we will try to collaborate south to south and make things that make sense. About booklets, you have one, please take one. I totally believe that we need to tell the story, and there are many stories to tell about the language barrier. The first website that I learned to do with Jill Smolin as a teacher was the Web Latino. And guess who was my colleague on the next desk, on the next chair? It was Raúl Echeverría, that now is the CEO of LACNIC. So we were both there. He was thin and had a mustache at the time, and we were sitting there doing a website that was trying to put together content in Spanish. And it's just amazing to come here so many years after to find the same thing over and over again. And even, I mean, Spanish is very well represented on the internet now. Don't even start with the other languages. One of our winners is from Niue, and he wants to bring Niuean language to the internet. So it's a very important thing that we need to do, and we did it in Latin America. We are still struggling. The guys that we are supporting in the Asia Pacific are doing it, but because we did it already, it doesn't mean that they don't have the chance. So we have to keep providing that first opportunity that we were so honored to have before to others. And about that language thing, my last comment. Going back to Fred and Cisco and probably an old pal of his, I've been working in former life on lots of wireless initiatives to bring connectivity to isolated communities. And we struggle a lot with the fact that the technical information about spectrum and spectrum management and configuration of all these routers and access points and you name it was all in English. So we did what is called a book sprint. It's a wireless for networking development in the developing world book. It's a green striped book that is going around, and the team that worked on that book is meeting right now as we speak in Copenhagen, and they are doing the third edition of the book. It's a 300 pages book with all you need to know about how to set up a wireless network somewhere in the world. And then when they got ready and had everything done, we managed to find translators from everywhere. And we have the book translated in 13 languages with less than $50,000. So it was just a question of we need this, we needed to get it done, we are going to do it. And it's that determination and that passion that we need to invest in a lot of the efforts that we do, and it's just because if you have a product like this book that you know is good, you just have to do it. There is no option to go on other way.
Sylvia, thank you. We have 6 minutes left, that is, until the end of the formal end of the session. I have Adiel in the queue. I have Tim. Anybody else? Katim. Okay, so be respectful of the time. And Tarek, okay. We might run a little bit late, but not too late. Adiel?
Yes, thank you, George. Before starting, I will maybe give a suggestion. Then, if I don't have time to finish, at least a suggestion. Say, I think from what we have been talking about, I think it's time for the I community to think about a kind of consortium, a group to focus on development and raise the profile of the different initiatives that we have, and something that can come out from this workshop. Now, coming back to the issue and the fact that what we as technical organization or I-STAR organization are doing in terms of development are not well known. There's two reasons for that. The first is our own fault, because we do not communicate much about what we are doing in terms of development, because it's not a core of our activities. And if you look at our budget, they are very limited budget, and we want to focus more on what we are there for. We are a member-driven organization, and our member tell us what we should be doing with the money. So we are more focused on operational things. The second thing is that government at the other side have different mechanisms of evaluating and measuring impact or contribution to development, which is completely different from what we are doing. If I take the case of Afrinic, for instance, we are RAR, we manage numbers, but we have several other projects which are side projects that contribute somewhere to improve the internet environment. We are happy to be in Kenya. We talk about Kenya as an example, but if you look at the base of the success of Kenya infrastructure, it's based on some very, very small steps. Having an exchange point, having a root server internally, having a community that is built around that. And those comes from where? From the technical community. So the way that it is measured, or its impact, the development measure is maybe what we need to do. We have the Anycast server, which is already there. We are offering that to CCTLD now in Africa. We want to host their DNS on our DNS Anycast infrastructure, which is an important element of the internet development. We have a root server copy program for 2 years now, and we are looking for country to host root server, and it's difficult to get them. So there's a lot of things which have been done, very, very, very operational. We should communicate more about that, but at the same time, we should help government to understand how it impacts development as we talk about it.
Thank you. And I should mention, you didn't introduce yourself.
Adiel Akloran, CEO of Afrinic.
Thank you. Tim?
Thank you, George. I'm Mick Tim. I'm the current co-chair of the Afrinic Policy Development Working Group, amongst other things. And I've lived in Africa for the last 7 years, and I am appalled that there is no one in any university in the world that teaches this as an academic subject. We have this global internet governance academic network that Bill Drake is a part of, and some other of you folks are a part of, and you just don't teach internet governance. And I'm mystified. You teach about, you talk about internet governance, but no one talks about how the internet really works. It's policy fora. There's just no academic institutions that do that as an institutional, as a degree, for example. And I think that would be very useful that GigaNet would take that up, amongst other things. And my other point is for Adil and the other I-STAR organizations. For the last 5 to 7 years, I've been watching these organizations invest a lot of time and money in this internet governance fora and development topics. And I think that you're pretty stretched. I don't know how much more time you can give. So I think you're right. We probably do need something to grow out of to focus on development from the I-STAR community.
Thank you. We have somebody here associated with the university who has a strong interest in internet governance. Maybe he will take up the charge. Katim, then Tarek. Katim?
Thanks, George. I just wanted to make one very brief point, because I've heard a number of people talk about how do we, first, of course, I think the very important point that we should try to keep better track of what's been done. Secondly, the issue of how do we measure what we've done. In other words, how do we know we've gotten there when we get there? You know, and I think here I'll put on my development evaluation hat and just point out that we need to bear in mind two issues: the issue of impact versus outputs, you know, and because at the end of the day, what really matters is the impact. That's the effect of what you're doing on development outcomes and development objectives. And also, of course, is the issue of the fact that sometimes, whilst your activities are done in the immediate, the impact of those activities actually take time. In other words, whilst we do some of these things, we have to bear in mind that some of the impact that we're looking for actually would take some time to realize. I think we just need to bear this in mind. Thanks.
Tarek?
Thank you. I just wanted to pinpoint two things. Maybe the comment that you have issued about whether governments are aware of what we are doing. I would say that governments are aware, but we need to approach them more and more aggressively. You are right, but they are looking for help, they are seeking help, and they are seeking direction, again, because the issue is very complex of internet governance and is becoming very diversified, and it's not anymore a technical issue. Unfortunately, or unfortunately, call it whatever you want, they don't have someone else except this community to refer back to and to look back at, and in order to lead. And therefore, we see, I repeat what I have said at the beginning, we have a responsibility, again, to lead, and to lead the way. And this brings me to my second point of regionalization of IGF. IGF is not an event only or a conference, it's a process. And we shouldn't forget that as a community. And it needs regionalization in order really to have an impact and effect. We need to work on the regionalization, similar to the approach that we have done many years ago, regionalization and then maybe localization. And this will happen only by capacity building. So we need to train people aggressively about what internet governance is worldwide on a regional level, and have the trainees from the regions, because they know the problems, the trainers from the region, because they know what the impacts and the challenges are in the region, because there are global internet governance issues, but there are regional and local issues as well that are very distinct, and if we overlook them, then I think we are committing a big mistake. Thank you.
An excellent point. Karen, 5 seconds. Adele.
Just responding to Adiel, and we're talking about outcomes from meetings. The internet community, we have a collaboration list that's mostly on policy issues. What I'd like to do is volunteer ISOC for the internet community to start a development collaboration email list as a start. We can develop a charter, and we've got a policy collaboration. Let's have a development collaboration list. So we'll volunteer to do that and move forward with the charter.
Thank you very much. I hope maybe you can say a few more words on that in an email or in a posting somewhere so that we can get a full flavor of what you're proposing. Last comment.
Thank you, George. My name is Adel El Zaim. I work with IDRC Canada, the International Development Research Center. If you know IDRC, I think you can imagine how glad I am, how happy I am to see here that we are talking about development and the need for ICT4D. I would like to bring to your attention the fact that today, even in Kenya, there is a specialist doing PhD on ICT4D. IDRC gladly contributed to the creation of several projects or programs, and the last 5 years we were concentrating our efforts on developing the research on ICT4D. So we don't need, I think, today to ask ourselves if we want to work south-south or north-south, or if we partner with the
the community where the development should take place, it's obvious. And a lot of communities are taking care of themselves today. But also, I mean, even around the world today, there is PhD and masters and ICT4Ds being in Canada, in United States, in UK, in France. So the world changed a lot. And really, I think any work on development should work or should include the researchers and to understand the future and how this future is built. Today, IDRC is no longer working on ICT4D. We are today working on the information society because tools are developed, methodologies are developed, disciplines are there. And what the new discipline is how the whole society now, which is networked already, is behaving and is changing in developed world and in developing world. Finally, I would just take again the example of the language, because if you want, like Sylvia said, do not repeat what we were saying 15 years ago, I think we need to see the language issue exactly like the infrastructure issues. We don't need today to translate software. We would need tools, we need databases, we need terminologies, we need language resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele. I'm not going to attempt to summarize this. There are too many threads, and they're all, a lot of them are worth picking up, and of course there'll be the transcript that will be available. I feel a little bit like I have a dog who's very frisky and loves to go on walks, and for her the journey is the destination, and that's exactly what we've done here. We've had an interesting journey through a lot of ideas. They're not going to go away. Neither are we. Thank you.